Coming up on Bridge City News, rioting and looting continued in many U.S. states as angry protesters rampage following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. It's a day hikers and cyclists have been waiting for. WATERTON Lakes National Park has officially reopened. And a 2-year-old birthday boy in Lethbridge got quite the surprise this weekend. We will explain.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. It is a day many of us have been waiting for. WATERTON Lakes National Park has reopened. The park closed in mid-March due to the coronavirus pandemic. Today, that all changed. The entrance to the park is now open, as is the Red Rock Parkway for hiking and cycling. The day-use picnic areas have reopened as well. The very popular Cameron Falls has reopened along with the public washroom. Cameron Bay and Emerald Bay picnic tables can be used again, but the washrooms there are still closed. Government officials say upper, middle, and lower WATERTON lakes are now accessible for non-motorized water recreation, and fishing permits are also available once again. Unfortunately, all camping facilities in WATERTON remain closed until at least June 21st, while Parks Canada assesses how these services can resume. Lethbridge City Council awarded grants to 8 local nonprofit groups today and their community use facilities. The recipients of the annual Community Capital Project grant include organizations involved with seniors, youth, and recreation. The grants ranging from $7,000 to $100,000 will go towards projects with a combined total value of $1.2 million. The program was established by the city in 2004 to support not-for-profits to expand and upgrade community use facilities. Big Brothers and Big Sisters in Lethbridge is in dire need of funding. The nonprofit group was forced to cancel its biggest fundraiser event of the year, Golf for Kids. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly explains why this nonprofit group and others like it are vital for youth in our community.
2 massive fundraisers for the Lethbridge and District Big Brothers and Sisters programs are the Golf for Kids' Sake event and the charity's annual gala. Both events are canceled and both bring in over $100,000 each.
Where are we going to find those funds? And we can find ways to scale back, but what's hard is that the need is still there for mentors. We're still providing our programs and we're still making matches virtually. We're still screening volunteers and finding innovative ways to provide mentoring to children.
The Lethbridge and District Boys and Girls Club has also been forced to put fundraising on hold, and fortunately received funds from the Boys and Girls Club of Canada.
We don't find ourselves being in a position to be asking for money right now from families because we know a lot of people are struggling during this time. And it's just about rethinking and recreating kind of how we see that fundraising. People are struggling right now, and we want to make sure that they're taken care of first because that's our priority as a nonprofit.
Both organizations serve hundreds of youths in the community. Without them, kids will suffer.
We, offer a service that is safe, it's successful, and it's impactful. We're providing kids with opportunities they wouldn't have. So if you're considering making a donation to an organization, why not Big Brothers, Big Sisters? It stays right within our local community. It goes directly to kids who need it.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
It was a surprise like no other for 2-year-old Hunter. Over 100 motorcyclists met at the Logan Boulay Arena yesterday in a ride to celebrate the youngster's birthday during the COVID-19 pandemic. Lethbridge MP Rachel Harder also made an appearance for the celebration, dropping off a present for the birthday boy. Aside from motorcyclists, a garbage truck made an appearance along with various sports cars as family, friends, and neighbors enjoyed the festivities. The Commandos Motorcycle Club, who organized the event, said their only request for those who came was to bring along a non-perishable food item for the Lethbridge Food Bank. Mental health issues have dominated many of us around the world as we've been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Registered psychologist Zach Rodenheiser says depression and anxiety are big issues among the patients who come in to see him. As Micah Quinn explains, Rodenheiser wants you to know that this is normal and you're not alone in your fight.
Zach Rodenheiser is a registered psychologist and owner of the Lethbridge Institute of Family Therapy. He says he's seen an increase in anxiety with patients due to COVID-19.
So I definitely have seen an increase in anxiety. I think your average person has now taken on a lot more anxiety than what they're used to. And then there's a lot of folks who, because of being isolated because of fears of the economy, fears of their health, and reasons like that have definitely increased. We've experienced an increase in anxiety, yeah.
Rodenizer says he expects more people to come in for counseling now that Lethbridge has been reopened to the public for stage 1 of the COVID-19 relaunch strategy for 2 weeks now.
And I think now is actually where we're going to see people just kind of finally exhaling and realizing that they need to talk to someone, or they need some type of support. That tends to happen during crisis mode. We don't really have the mental capacity sometimes to just slow down and talk to someone about it.
Rodenizer says suicide is linked to unemployment, especially among middle-aged men.
Suicide, when we look at how it's related to the economy, it doesn't necessarily follow like stock markets or those type of economic indicators, but it does follow employment.
Plugging into social circles, churches, and sports teams to reconnect with people is also important, Rodenizer says. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Since medically assisted death became law in Canada around 4 years ago, more than 7,000 Canadians have died. Alex Schadenberg with Euthanasia Prevention Coalition says a new bill has been introduced by Ottawa which will make things quicker for people to take their own lives, since a waiting period will be taken away.
The problem with eliminating the 10-day waiting period is that means that if I'm not having a bad day, and let's put this in a human context, I could have a difficult medical condition, but I'm now going through a bad day. Let's say I got a bad prognosis, bad news. Well, I can then die the same day as I request euthanasia. It gives me no chance or opportunity to change my mind, or no opportunity to have a good day.
Catch my full interview with Alex Schadenberg discussing his concerns with some of the changes to the Euthanasia Bill C7 coming up later in our program. A note from Lethbridge Police Service that the changes implemented to LPS operations during the coronavirus pandemic have now been extended until June 30th. That means public access to the LPS front counter will remain closed. The Collision Reporting Center is by appointment only, and reporting for things like lost property, theft under $5,000, and damage to property under $5,000 will continue online. Small businesses in Lethbridge are going to be getting some much-needed help during the coronavirus pandemic. Community Futures Lethbridge will start offering loans up to $40,000 through the federal government's Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. Darlene Sinclair is the executive director of the Community Futures Lethbridge region, and she says no interest will be charged on these loans until December 31st of 2022 for those who apply.
And at that point, you can either pay back $30,000 and $10,000 would be forgiven, or you can enter into a 3-year term loan with us and then pay it back in that method as well. In our regions is being an alternative lender. So we help businesses when the banks are not able to, and our role is to get businesses bankable again. So we're really excited that the federal government included us in this rollout of some of these relief programs, because quite often the businesses that we deal with are the ones who do fall through the cracks, right? So they're the ones that aren't bankable yet.
The full balance of the loan has to be paid back no later than December 31st of the year 2025. Sports enthusiasts and folks who are itching to get on the patio this week are in luck. The Canadian Brew House is set to have its grand opening this Wednesday.
We're a sports bar, you know. That's our foundation. But we allow minors. We're going to have bowling when it's legal again, and we're just really excited to be down in Lethbridge. You know, we're excited to hear that hockey might be coming back. We're excited to have anything entertaining to do, with people being able to get back out and socialize. You know, you hear the terms social distancing versus physical distancing, and while we want to practice physical distancing, we're super excited to be able to have an environment where people can socialize with one another, get together, get out with friends, and have some fun again.
Lethbridge will be the country's 35th Canadian Brew House and the first to have a bowling alley. Many of those in our agriculture sector are worried about the future as a result of COVID-19. Cremona, Alberta cattle rancher Bruce Bird says he's worried about a glut of animals and lower prices this fall when he sends his young cattle to market. A feedlot operator near Airdrie, Alberta, Tom Thorlickson, says his facility has stopped buying any other cattle due to COVID-19.
I would say that probably our life won't change much more on the production side of things. We have to think a little harder, think outside the box. There's some marketing issues and commodity issues that it's a real ripple effect and something that's pretty pretty slow to hit us, but when it hits us extra hard. So we start to think that way. This is the preliminary stage, and then as we get to the fall, then we got the marketing issue that could catch up with it at that point.
As far as like being cow-calf producers, we haven't seen a real, not a negative effect as of yet. You know, our farms and stuff are just kind of carrying on the way that they always have, you know. So I think anything that's going to be negative that we'll see is going to be happening come this fall and probably in 2021.
We had cattle that were supposed to go out the second week of April, and we still have them here today. So the biggest problem we have is the uncertainty. When are we ever going to know when the plants will be up to full capacity? That's the number one concern, and until we can get a consistent marketing base going, it'll be kind of the ever-going threat we're living with right now.
If you're renting a mobile home or you are a landlord of a mobile home, more help is now available to you. The province announced that it has launched a dispute resolution service for eviction-related matters. The Residential Tenancy Dispute Resolution Service will handle case files in regards to tenant and landlord issues when it comes to termination of tenancy. Officials say the service is faster and less expensive alternative to the court system to help resolve tenancy disputes for Albertans renting residential properties. Landlords and tenants can file applications for remedies up to $50,000. Currently, urgent applications are being heard up to 15 business days after filing. The government of Alberta announced that just over 6,500 Albertans have now recovered from the novel coronavirus, leaving just 400 active cases. 53 people are still in hospital with the virus, along with 6 people in ICUs. There were 34 new cases reported over the past 24 hours and no new deaths. Our province's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dean Henshaw, says following public health measures while gathering will continue to help flatten the curve.
You must still keep 2 meters apart from anyone outside your household or cohort family. I would again urge you not to share food or drinks with people outside your household or cohort family, as this greatly increases the risk of infection by passing objects such as containers or serving spoons from person to person. I know it may be difficult or even seem rude to ask guests to bring their own food and drink and not share it, but it is necessary.
Henshaw adds that outdoor gatherings have a much lower risk, so if you are getting together, stay outside if possible. The province of Ontario reported another 404 cases of COVID-19 today, along with 10 more deaths. More than 28,000 people have been diagnosed with the coronavirus in Ontario, but fortunately, just over 22,000 have also recovered. There have also been 2,300 deaths in total. Meanwhile, in Quebec, there were 295 new COVID-19 cases today, along with 20 new deaths. We'll have updated Alberta provincial numbers for you coming up in tonight's 11 p.m. newscast. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says $2.2 billion will be given to municipalities from the federal gas tax fund to help cities cope with the fallout of the coronavirus. A demonstration in Montreal in support of George Floyd, the black man who died while in police custody in Minnesota, turned violent last night. After the 3-hour peaceful protest ended, groups clashed with police and vandalized stores downtown. The death of Floyd, who was seen on video pleading for air while a police officer pressed a knee on his neck, has sparked protests across North America. Earlier today in New York City's Soho district, mobs of people rampaged down the sidewalks and smashed the windows of various luxury shops to steal merchandise. Hundreds of people marauded through the area, breaking into Rolex, Chanel, and Prada boutiques, along with various clothing and electronic stores. One person was shot amid the chaos and was being treated in an ambulance. Small fires burned in the streets, which were covered with glass and garbage. Police appeared overwhelmed and incapable of stopping the destruction there. A dozen crisis-trained chaplains with the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team have descended into Minneapolis, Minnesota in the wake of George Floyd's death. After arriving with their mobile ministry center, they've been bringing a message of hope in a very hopeless situation.
We're here in Minneapolis. We have responded from Charlotte, North Carolina, down to the civil unrest that's taking place here. There's a lot of anger here. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of frustration. We see a lot of people with uncertainty as they look at the debris and the destruction, as the people march in crowds with anger, as different things are going on. You can see in the faces of people a sense of hopelessness. but we know the one that holds the key to all hopelessness, that can make a way through the midst of any tragedy. And that's what we're providing, that open door to the Lord Jesus Christ.
When you've been married 10, 20, or even 30 years, many couples say it's important to keep the lines of communication open and to have date nights. Pastors Kelly and Joylyn Stickle, who've been married for 23 years, say understanding each other's love language is an important part of a successful marriage.
It's about setting aside time for one another. It's also about understanding each other's love language. And I love that book. We always come back to it. It's such a great, we can be communicating love and communicating passion, but if the other one's not receiving it in the way that we think we're communicating it, then we're missing. So it's really about investing in the other person, what makes them happy, what communicates love to them, and making sure that you're expressing that in multiple ways.
Watch the full interview with the Stickles discussing the keys to a successful marriage coming up in the second half of our show. A beautiful week is shaping up weather-wise here in southwestern Alberta. Full weather details are coming right up. Lots of sunshine is in the forecast this week. Jeanette Rocher is here now with all of the weather details. The UV index is climbing, Jeanette, this week. Might be a good opportunity to finally get out, get a few shots of vitamin D.
Yeah, and what better time to do that than when the sun is shining, and it's going to be doing plenty of that this week. Tonight, though, partly cloudy, clearing overnight. Overnight low is 9 degrees. We're going to be seeing some west winds gusting to 50 kilometers per hour at times. Into tomorrow, that wind will continue gusting to 50 at times. High of 23, though, and a UV index of 8 or very high. Sunshine is forecasted for tomorrow, and then an overnight low of 12 degrees, which is a pretty nice overnight low. And then as we look further into the 5-day forecast, lots of sunshine again on Wednesday, high 21. 18 is the high for Thursday, sunshine as well. Friday, mainly sunny skies. 23 is the high, 24 for Saturday, 21 for Sunday, as we get a mix of sun and cloud on that weekend. And even looking at those overnight lows, pretty decent compared to what the average should be, which is 7 for the lows, 20 for the highs. We're definitely getting above that range. The high temperature on this day was back in 1986. It was 32 degrees, and the lowest temperature was -2 in 1951. And look at that, we got 16 hours of daylight, just maybe 2 minutes shorter, 2 minutes shy of that. 5:28 rather was the sunrise. 9:30 is our evening sunset. So like I said, just shy of 16 hours there. And then as we look into the national forecast, we're going to be seeing a little bit of rain expected in both Victoria and Vancouver tomorrow. 16 is the high for Victoria, 15 for Vancouver, 21 is the high for both Edmonton and Calgary under sunshiny skies tomorrow. Much the same for the rest of the prairies. Sunny over in Saskatchewan here. Saskatoon's high 23, 25 in Regina. Winnipeg's high 28 degrees. All three of these cities have very, very high UV indexes of 9. So definitely time to break out the sunscreen if you are in the prairies. Now there is a risk of an afternoon thunderstorm in Toronto. 25 is the high, 22 the high in Ottawa as well. They could see seeing some rainy skies as well with thunderstorms. Showers expected for Montreal with a high of 20 degrees. Sunshine over in Fredericton with a high of 17. 12 is the high in Charlottetown tomorrow with a mix of sun and cloud. Mix of sun and cloud in Halifax. They could see periods of rain though. 16 is their high, and 10 degrees is the high for St. John's with a 40% chance of showers. There you go. That is your forecast.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau unveiled a $2.2 billion program to support Canadian municipalities whose revenues have plunged amid COVID-19 lockdowns. The funding will be an advance payment of the federal gas tax fund. Towns and cities usually receive this money each year in 2 installments. Ottawa will be delivering this fund in one payment this month to help fund various infrastructure projects. Since municipalities cannot run deficits to cover operating costs, Trudeau says Ottawa will work with the provinces to help inject cash. Towns and cities are a provincial jurisdiction, so Trudeau has to walk a fine line in helping mayors without overstepping the federal government's role. It is business as usual at many Alberta ranches, but cattle producers and feedlot operators are worried about the fallout from COVID-19. Cremona rancher Bruce Bird says he worries about the glut of animals with lower prices when he sends his cattle to market this fall. He says there will probably be a ripple effect from a backlog of cattle that built up when meat packers temporarily closed their plants. Tom Thorlickson, who operates a feedlot near Airdrie, Alberta, has 14,000 cattle on site that cost him close to $1 million a month to feed. The review of the potential takeover of Cineplex by the world's second-largest cinema chain has been extended by 2 weeks. The review by Investment Canada of Cineworld Group's $2.8 billion acquisition of Cineplex has been delayed until June the 15th. The sale of Canada's largest movie chain is subject to several conditions, including approval from Ottawa. Cineplex says if conditions are not satisfied or waived by June 30th, the sale will fall through. A number of big-name stores in the United States are temporarily closing because of protests over the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis last week. Minneapolis-based Target closed or shortened its hours in more than 200 stores over the weekend. 6 will remain closed for an extended period after sustaining damage from protests. Target says employees at closed stores will be paid for up to 14 days, including premiums they are earning due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 43 points on the day to finish at 15,236. The Dow was up 91 points to 25,475. The S&P 500 was up 11 points to 3,055. The Nasdaq was up 62 points to finish at 95.52. Oil was up 7 cents to 35.56 per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to $1.78. Gold was down $1.50 to $17.3805 an ounce, and silver was down 2 cents to $18.28 an ounce. Wheat is at $242 per metric ton. Barley's also at $242. Canola is at $4.57, and corn is at $231 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 63 cents to $98.98. Feeder cattle were up 78 cents to $136.13, and lean hogs were down $1.88 to $55.15. The Canadian dollar was even on the day at 73.68 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, it's a day many of us have been waiting for. WATERTON Lakes National Park has finally reopened. The park closed in mid-March due to the coronavirus pandemic. Today, that all changed, as the entrance to the park is now open, as is the Red Rock Parkway for hiking and cycling. The day-use picnic areas have also reopened. The very popular Cameron Falls has reopened, but unfortunately, all camping facilities in WATERTON remain closed until at least June 21st, while Parks Canada assesses how these services can resume. What are the keys to a successful marriage? Communication, humor, having the Lord in your life? Up next, I chat with a couple who have been married for more than 20 years, Kelly and Joylyn Stickle, to get their thoughts. That interview is coming up. Marriage, it is often blissful for the first 6 months, and then real life kicks in after the honeymoon fades, and then the hard work begins. What are some of the keys to a successful marriage to help keep the romance going? Joining me at the desk today is Kelly Stickle, lead pastor with My Victory Church, and his lovely and talented bride, Joylyn Stickle, also with My Victory. Thanks for joining me on BCN here, you guys.
Thank you for having us.
It's great to be here.
Yep.
Ladies first, how long have you guys been married?
23 years this year.
Wow. Does it feel like 23 or
no?
Long? No.
No, I feel like I'm 18, so that doesn't do that.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
no,
awesome.
it when you look back at the time when you weren't married, it seems like forever ago.
Yeah.
But no, it's been fun.
Yeah.
For the
Kelly,
most part.
how's the marriage really evolved since when you guys first got married to here we are 23 years later?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's evolved in many ways. I think, you go through all the different phases from feelings to pressing through to getting to know one another to the honest conversations, all of that stuff to working together. But we've been blessed. We both came from very solid homes, and both of our parents were in great marriages, so we didn't carry a lot of expectations or baggage in that. But so we came in with a lot of that stuff, and were able to work through a lot of that stuff.
So Joylyn, when you see that there's signs that your marriage may be in trouble a little bit,
yeah,
because no marriage is perfect.
No.
How do you recognize some of those signs?
I think when you're with someone for a while, then you kind of know if something's off. You feel if something's off, and I think if you notice something's off, for us at least, we have always been very open. We've tried to be communicating a lot with that. And
never go to bed angry, right?
Well, we try. There's been a few times when I'm just like, no, we're not doing this tonight. So honestly, right?
Yeah.
But no, that's obviously a very good thing to keep in mind. And yeah, and it's wise to not go to bed angry, but also we've found it's sometimes wise not to hash things out when you're tired. So sometimes we just say, okay, we're going to table this till tomorrow. I like you a lot. Just remember that, and we're going to sleep. And then we'll work it when our brains are fresh.
Kelly, how about for you? What were some of the warning signs when your marriage may potentially be in trouble?
I think one sign that is often overlooked is the joy level in the relationship. So if the Bible says, Nehemiah said it in Nehemiah 8:10 that the joy of the Lord is our strength. So if the joy level and the happiness and that joy level seems to decrease in any way, that's an indication that something's not as strong as it should be. So to me, that's one of those signs. If we're not laughing the same together, and the joy in the home is not the same as it once was, the passion wasn't the same, then something is slipping. And so let's jump on it and address it right away.
Now, you guys have kids.
We do. We
How
have
many
6.
Kids? 6 kids.
6 kids, a daughter-in-law, and 2 grandbabies.
Oh, grandkids! Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You guys started really young then.
Yeah, we did.
Right?
We love it. We think we have some energy still to run the race with all the grandbabies too.
Now, do you still have date nights? And how important are date nights?
They're vital. Yes, we do date nights every week, and we've made that a important routine. Pastoring is not a 9 to 5 and then shut it off kind of thing. So there's lots of evenings that are required. So we just decided right from the beginning, and we started pastoring virtually right after we got married.
Yeah.
And so we just decided, no, we're going to make each other a priority at least once a week in a date night, and focus on each other.
Traditional dinner and a movie, or do you guys mix it up with axe throwing?
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we like to get out and have dinner together, just so we can have talk without kids hanging off our arms. But we do talk about the kids mostly when we're out there. We try and say, okay, we're not talking about ministry, we're not talking about the kids, and then
we sit there and stare
a
at
little
each
bit
other.
bored. No.
But you're not on your phones, right?
No. We make priority not to be.
How detrimental is that to a marriage?
Oh, totally.
Putting in too much electronics, you're on your phone too much,
Yeah.
maybe in front of your computer, or even other electronics?
Yeah, and I think it can be a habit that hurts a lot of relationships for sure. When you're trying to, you're wrecking memories that could be had one-on-one FaceTime by recording memories or by looking at other people's memories and such. So,
it's true. I like back in the day when we didn't have cell phones and somebody would call. There's times where you let the phone ring when you're in an important conversation. But today, when you get a text comes in, or we're ready to drop everything right now and be distracted from the conversation, and that's really detrimental to good communication.
Aren't there also temptations as well when you're online? Maybe an old friend wants to reconnect on a social media avenue like Facebook.
Yeah.
Maybe an old girlfriend or an old boyfriend, perhaps. And
and it's easy to hide that too, right? Yeah. Like it's not like you're getting a letter in the mail from this old friend that your wife or husband could find. It's easy to hide these secret affairs that could happen online.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you rekindle the romance, though? I mean, after 20 years, date nights are fine, but how else do you rekindle the romance?
Go ahead.
What's the show rated? No, it's about setting aside time for one another. It's also about understanding each other's love language, and I love that book. We always come back to it. It's such a great, we can be communicating love and communicating passion, but if the other one's not receiving it in the way that we think we're communicating it, then we're missing. So it's really about investing in the other person, what makes them happy, what communicates love to them, and making sure that you're expressing that in multiple ways. So, little things that we've decided right from the beginning in our marriage was, Joylyn is really, big on physical touch and really big on, so when I leave, I don't leave without saying goodbye and a hug and a kiss. When I come home, I go to her and it's a hug and a kiss right away. And it's the communication that way is just saying, no, hey, you're the most important. I'm going to you. You get kids jumping on you, but you go right to her.
Because you never know, too, that maybe that might be the last hug and kiss you'll ever receive from your spouse.
Yeah.
Something could happen, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I should have hugged and kissed my spouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it communicates priorities, right? So I'm excited to see you when I get home.
Yeah.
I miss you when I go. It's little things like that just keeps things. And then text throughout the day or little sweet nothings here and there or whatever it might be is yeah, just
We
romance
still
is
flirt with each
Yeah,
other.
we still flirt with one another. Yeah, we like that.
I've talked to other couples as well that say another thing you could do with your love language is maybe do the dishes. Or maybe the hubby can make dinner, you know, maybe once a week or twice a week. In the summertime, a lot more.
Yep.
And we've got the barbecue going,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
If we
it's
want
just
to keep
simple
the
things.
family alive, we do that as little as possible.
Yeah, that's right. Well, but I mean, those are simple
Yeah.
things you can do as well as
Absolutely.
a husband, right? Or
Yeah,
as a wife.
exactly.
Just little things like that.
Yeah, and things, they don't have to be big romantic gestures and going away for the weekend or whatever. And those are fun. Like you said, the date nights are fun, but no, it's all the little things along the way that show that you care and show that you're priority to each other.
How important is it to have something in common? A lot of people say opposites attract, it's better, you know, the yin with the yang, there's proper balance that way. You know, she's an introvert, I'm an extrovert, but we make it work. But I don't know, the older I get, my wife and I have been married for 30 years, I'm thinking having more things in common, similarities, works better, more effectively for a successful marriage. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the longer you are married, the longer, or the more things you do get in common, I think. The more things like we, my husband loves football, and he likes to say that I'm a huge fan of football, but I am a huge fan of him, and so I enjoy sitting down and watching it every once in a while with him.
And his reactions?
Yeah, well.
And the tears that flow?
I like
We won't go
I like
there.
when we're
Depends
winning.
on who's- yeah.
But no, I think it's, you kind of love your person, and so you love what they love. And then there are some times when, like, we've always been in ministry, as he said, and so that's a huge passion beyond a job for both of us. And so that's our life, right? Like our ministry and our family. And so those things are huge commonalities that we share. But as far as hobbies and such like that, we
love the motorcycle. Yeah.
We love the motorcycle, and yeah, and we enjoy doing things that the other likes to do as well.
Now you support him in football. What do you support Joy Lynn with? Maybe some of her passions.
Yeah, well.
Go to the opera, the ballet.
We watch some movies once in a while. That,
Yes.
yeah,
Chick flicks?
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
he does.
He doesn't fall asleep though, does he?
No.
Okay.
No, he's very.
And I try hard not to mock any of them. It's good.
If he's quiet, then it's good.
How about when it comes to kids, making time for yourselves and say, kids, we love you guys, we'll die for you guys, but right now this is mom and dad time.
Yeah, hugely important. And my kids, because we homeschool them, they're home with me all the time, and Dad's home quite a bit too. Just the way he is, he tries to be home as much as he can throughout between the meetings and stuff, and we'll pop into his office and all that. So they get to see him. It's not like they're desperate for both of us by the end of the day because they've seen us throughout the day. So yeah, we don't feel bad about saying, okay, you can go. Even screens are great babysitters every once in a while, where you say, go on your screens and we're gonna just sit and talk, and it works sometimes.
Yeah, we try to do a holiday at least once
Yeah.
a year where it's just the two of us.
Yes.
And we do holidays with the family, but we have at least a week where the two of us just go away, and that's important.
How important is respect when it comes to a relationship?
Oh man, it's utmost.
Yeah, it's vital.
I think even respecting who these people are, who your spouse is, and like you had talked about the love languages, and understanding that, okay, my love language is physical touch, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how he's going to feel love, but he knows that that's how I naturally show love. So just kind of respecting who each other is, and understanding that and going with that.
Yeah, I think love is talked about often, but I think respect is not talked about enough. I think it's a vital part of people will focus on love and the feeling of love, but I think respect is the showing of value at another level for each one. And it's always focused on just the men need it, men and women need respect too.
Yeah.
What about forgiveness?
Yes,
Like
it's huge.
some couples go through an affair, other couples go through whatever else, some traumatic experience in their relationship. And the person says, I'll forgive you, but I'll never forget.
And I think forgiveness needs to be separated from trust too. Like that's a whole other issue for sure. But yeah, forgiveness is for yourself. And I think if you're waiting for the other person to need that forgiveness or to ask for that or to reciprocate it, then you're gonna be waiting for a while probably. So I think forgiveness is for your own health.
Yeah, it definitely it's about self, but forgiveness is like Joylyn said, is different than trust, and we mix those things up. And I think with the idea that we forgive and forget, I think that's a misnomer as well. I don't think there's certain things that you can't forget, but the ability to forgive is a choice to not hold against the other anymore, and that's freeing for yourself when you forgive your spouse. But that's also freeing for the relationship. So it's vital. We're all human beings. We're all fallible. We're all going to hurt one another. We're all going to make mistakes. So forgiveness is invaluable to a relationship.
When Julie and I first got married in 1990, I was working in radio, and a lot of broadcast journalists, you pay your dues all over Canada. You know, you travel, you go from station to station. But one good thing that we really realized in the early years was that we had to rely on each other and God. We didn't have any outside interference from other family members. As much as we love our moms and our dads, but sometimes, they can interfere, especially when you first get married. So would you give that kind of advice to other couples as well, to maybe kind of distance yourself, maybe create a little separation with maybe some moms and dads?
Yes, I do a lot of premarital counseling, and I advise, especially for newlyweds when they first get married, is keep a healthy a separation between, parents, and because if we run to our parents with everything that she did wrong, then mom and dad are going to take that resentment, and it's going to create tension in the family. But we dump on mom and dad what she did wrong, but then we don't say, well, we made up and she apologized and all of that. Mom and dad are still walking around with this resentment, and it creates tension. And so be careful whose shoulder you cry on, but also the Bible does say leave and cleave, right? So it does say leave the parents. And so there has to be this healthy separation, saying, hey, I don't need mom and dad like I did before. I'm leaving that necessity in order to focus on our marriage. And she's the most important thing now to me.
And I guess at the same time, if you ever want marital advice from your parents, let's say they're married 30, 40, 50 years, it's kind of cool that you can go talk to them as well, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because chances are they've been down the same road that you guys are going down.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But make sure that your spouse is aware that when you're talking to mom and dad that we're having this conversation. This is what we talked about, and so that there's no expectation of tension as well, feeling like, okay, you're dumping on them about me. That makes it awkward as well. So just be honest with one another what the conversation is.
That brings me to secrets.
Yeah.
How dangerous are secrets between couples? Outside of the fact that you don't know what I got you for Father's Day or for your birthday, right?
There are no secrets. She always knows what I'm getting for
presents.
For
like,
presents.
oh,
I'm like, I can never. She's like, you got me this. Oh.
It's all right. He gets me what I want then.
Yeah. How dangerous, Joylyn? What do you think? Secrets?
Yeah, I think they're hugely dangerous. And I think the fact that you, in the first place, feel like you need to keep a secret is the root of it rather than the secret itself, right? And so if you don't have that trust relationship with your spouse, that you feel like there's a secret that needs to be had, or you feel like that you can't trust them with something, or you're doing something that you shouldn't be and need to keep that secret, then it's hugely damaging.
It is, yeah. It's the separation, I think, between intimacy. Like, intimacy is into me, you, see, and if there's a secret in there that I'm holding, then there's going to be a separation of that intimacy, and there's going to be something that's going to be a space between that's going to, and you might never share it or not share it, or you may never know, but there's something that just created a space between that intimacy, and two becoming one, you can't afford that space.
How important is it having Jesus Christ as the foundation to a healthy marriage?
Vital. Yeah, absolutely vital. And I don't know, like, there's times when in our life we're like, we don't understand how people can go through things in life, in family, in marriage without having Jesus. And like Kelly said, we've always had that, and so we're able to, like, we've had that in our families, right?
Yes.
And so we just feel like everybody needs that.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I totally agree. I think the best analogy that I saw was the picture of a triangle, and the further, the base of the triangle is is the furthest separation between there. If God was at the point of the triangle, the closer that we get to God as it goes up the triangle, the closer we get to one another. And if one goes up and one doesn't, gets closer to God and one doesn't, there's still a separation in space. But the closer we get to God, the closer we get to one another. So I think he's the center, and it's vital for a healthy marriage.
That's a pyramid scheme I can get behind.
Yeah, there we go.
Absolutely.
Joylyn Stickle, Kelly Stickle with My Victory Church, thanks again for joining us here in studio.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Hal.
The term medical assistance in dying or MAID is now being widely used in place of the term assisted suicide. The result, however, is still the same. Ottawa is now considering expanding the boundaries put in place to safeguard the practice. Joining me now to talk about it is Alex Schadenberg, Executive Director of Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. Alex, welcome back to BCN.
It's great to be with you, Hal.
Alex, a court in Quebec recently struck down the section of Canada's euthanasia law requiring natural death be reasonably foreseeable before a person qualifies for death by euthanasia. Can you share a bit of the backstory on this and the court's reasoning in striking down the law?
Yes, so when Canada legalized euthanasia in June of 2016, one of the requirements of the law was that somebody's natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable. So they allowed euthanasia for physical or psychological suffering, but one of the components was that your natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable, meaning terminal illness. Now that was an odd definition anyway. Nonetheless, in September, a Quebec court struck down the requirement that natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable. So by striking down that requirement, that changes the law because you would not have to be terminally ill. But also what it meant was that if the law allowed euthanasia for physical or psychological suffering, the only caveat was that you had to be terminally ill. Once you remove that, then it also then clearly allows euthanasia for psychological suffering alone. And this is a difficulty because clearly Canadians are not interested in euthanasia for, mental illness, depression, etc.
Now, the federal government's response to this court decision is Bill C-7. Some are saying this bill is really a two-tiered law. Your thoughts on this?
Right. So what the federal government did is that the court decision came down in September, and that was during the election. And the federal government decided not to appeal the court decision. So by not appealing the court decision, then the court decision becomes law. So they have to amend the law, they say. So what they've done is they've come up with this Bill C-7. Now, Bill C-7 is a two-tier law. It does two things. They kept that natural death must be reasonably foreseeable definition, even though it's sort of awkward. And it really lacks meaning in many ways, because natural death being reasonably foreseeable, well, Hal, I think most of our natural deaths are reasonably foreseeable. Nonetheless, it depends, I guess, how you define it. But what it means is that if you are not terminally ill, then you could have euthanasia instantaneously. So what they did is they said that there would be no waiting period. The original law required a 10-day waiting period, and they said under this new Bill C-7, the 10-day waiting period would be eliminated for people whose natural death was reasonably foreseeable, who were deemed to be terminally ill. But for those who are not terminally ill, they put in a 90-day waiting period. Now, this is a serious problem, actually, because our Canadian courts tend not to deal with inequality within the law very well. It is my opinion that if they pass Bill C-7 as it's written, that the bill will be challenged in the courts very quickly because there's a natural inequality within the law, meaning that if you're terminally ill, you can die immediately, but if you're not terminally ill, you have to wait 90 days. Now let's go one step further. The problem with eliminating the 10-day waiting period is that means that if I'm not having a bad day, and let's put this in a human context, I could have a difficult medical condition, but I'm now going through a bad day. Let's say I got a bad prognosis, bad news. Well, I can then die the same day as I request euthanasia. It gives me no chance or opportunity to change my mind or no opportunity to have a good day.
Now, Bill C-7 changes the law to now allow doctors and nurse practitioners to lethally inject an incompetent person as long as that person consented to death, as you were talking about, by lethal injection before becoming incompetent. Do you see any issues with that?
Yeah, so the other thing they did, so first of all, Bill C-7, in my opinion, is a very big problem, and I'll give you a couple of reasons. One is it's gone far beyond what the Quebec court decision said. The Quebec court decision simply said that your natural death being reasonably foreseeable was going to be struck, because once again it created what they called an inequality within the law. It denied certain people equal rights within the law. But now what they've done is they've expanded the law even further by saying, well, if someone has asked for euthanasia while competent and now has become incompetent, then they can still have euthanasia, death by lethal injection. Well, this is a serious problem, because once again it denies someone the ability to change their mind. Because what happens is, if you're declared incompetent by law, you now cannot change your mind. So there was the case in the Netherlands, there was the court case in the Netherlands that was just completed last year, of the woman who had previously had requested euthanasia while competent, and then while incompetent they came to do it, and she was resisting and saying no. So they put the sedative in her coffee because she continued to say no, she continued to resist. And then she continued to resist even after receiving the sedative in her coffee. So then the doctor asked the family to hold her down as she was given the lethal injection. This is the kind of thing that you lead into when you allow euthanasia for people who are incompetent. There's another serious problem. The doctor cannot confirm anymore that the person continues to want to die by lethal injection, because they're considered incompetent. So you're going to have someone lethally injecting someone and you cannot confirm that they continue to want to die. It opens up the question. I also go one step further. It actually is against what the Supreme Court of Canada said in the euthanasia decision, the Carter decision, because they said that the person would have to be competent, and this will allow euthanasia for incompetent people.
So does Bill C-7 allow euthanasia where mental illness is the sole underlying medical condition? And if so, could someone with depression potentially end their life?
Well, this isn't actually an issue that angers me, Hal, because the bill put in a line saying that mental illness is not a disability, disease, etc. under Bill C-7, but in fact that doesn't stop euthanasia for mental illness. So they've actually they're playing a game with us, because the bill says that, but that in fact doesn't stop euthanasia for mental illness, because the law says euthanasia is allowed for physical or psychological suffering. And psychological suffering includes issues around mental illness. So in fact, this bill does allow euthanasia for mental illness, even though they're telling us it doesn't. And I really get angry when they play these games with us, because they're telling us one thing and it actually doesn't actually say that. It actually doesn't definitively do that. They would have actually defined psychological suffering in the bill in order to have to say that we're going to prevent euthanasia for people with mental illness. Now, Canadians clearly don't want people with mental illness dying by euthanasia, and so that's why they tossed that line within the bill, but that actually doesn't prevent euthanasia for mental illness. It's a real card game that I'm really upset about.
Do you believe that the safeguards that are included in our assisted suicide laws are written with loosely defined language to allow the laws to be maybe redefined over time?
In fact, Hal, that's exactly what the bills have done. The bills have not properly defined the language within the legislation, and they did that on purpose. So even the original bill did that. What it did is it said that your natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable, but then it didn't define that. And then it had several little loopholes within it. It said that there was a 10-day waiting period in the original legislation, but then it said the doctor could waive the 10-day waiting period. And now, only 2.5 years later, we're actually going to get rid of the 10-day waiting period when someone's defined as terminally ill. So, the whole thing is not designed actually to protect people in a difficult time of their life, because this is actually what we're talking about. Euthanasia is not something that people are demanding. If you look at the data, they're not demanding it because they're in horrific pain. That's what was sold to us. But, there's very few people in that condition actually demanding euthanasia. Usually it's someone who's going through a very difficult time of their life, and they're a human being who's emotionally and psychologically connected to their physical condition. They're asking for euthanasia because they're at a low time in their life. And this is what we're dealing with here. And these laws are not defined on purpose in order to allow expansion over time. We could actually have a whole show on how the law actually expanded between when it was passed until today, just on that alone, looking at how it's being reinterpreted by people who are actually doing euthanasia.
Last December, the Delta Hospice Society was ordered by the province of BC to provide euthanasia or lose its funding. How has Delta really responded to those demands, and what happened since?
Yeah, so this battle's been going on with the Delta Hospice Society, and I have to first make this very clear. The Delta Hospice Society is an independent organization. It's not a government organization. Yes, it receives funding for the healthcare service it provides, But the hospice was actually built with community money. The building itself is not that old. It was built with fundraised dollars in the Delta region of British Columbia, and it did not receive provincial funding for the building itself. So we're talking about an independent organization that is saying we will not do euthanasia. That's contra to what we believe. In fact, in their charter as an organization, as their nonprofit charter says, we do not hasten death. So what the government has told them is you're going to hasten death, you're going to do euthanasia, you're going to do lethal injection, you're going to do this, and if you don't do it, we're going to pull your funding. And they're also intimidating them within that same context, because the letter they've received from the government is not only saying that we're going to pull your funding, it's saying we're going to take over your building. Take over your building. It's an independent organization. It's not part of the LIN or the, how would you say, the local healthcare unit. It was not even funded by the healthcare unit. It's an independent organization. They're talking about taking it over. This is a very, disgusting thing that's going on if you consider what the government's talking about doing. The Delta Hospice has been responding by saying we're not going to do it. They're seeking legal advice, and the battle's far from over.
Alex, what about the conscience rights of medical professionals? I mean, can Canadian doctors refuse to participate in euthanasia?
So the conscience rights issue is a provincial matter, and so therefore in Manitoba, for instance, doctors have the right of conscience, and they don't have to participate, they don't have to do the act. Whereas in Ontario, the College of Physicians has said that a physician has to do what they call an effective referral, which means referral for the purpose of the act. So you have different rules in different places. So in fact, the answer is a yes and a no depending on where you live. Now the difficulty is, for instance, in Ontario, where the College of Physicians is saying that doctors have to do what they call an effective referral. That means referral for actually doing euthanasia. Doctors are saying, well, I don't believe in euthanasia, so I'm not going to do it, but I'm also not going to refer because I'm not going to send you to the killer. I'm not going to do it. And I think when I say killer, some people might feel uncomfortable, but in fact, we need to call it what it is. Euthanasia is lethal injection. And if you look at the actual law, the law creates an exception to homicide within the criminal code. So if you want to find where the law on euthanasia is, it's under homicide in the criminal code, and they created an exception to it. So in fact, that's what it is. So the fact that physicians are being pressured, some of them have left Ontario. We've lost physicians. Some of them have gone to the US or to other jurisdictions where they're not being pressured or forced to do euthanasia or refer for it.
Now, what about mature minors? These would be children who are considered mature enough to consent to their own medical treatment. Are the Trudeau Liberals possibly going to allow these kids to choose assisted suicide?
So in the original legislation, the law says you have to be 18 and you have to be competent, a competent adult. It also says that you have to be capable of making the decision. So therefore, this whole other question of, people who have become incompetent wasn't part of it. There's been a lot of debate about children. Now, Bill C-7 does not extend euthanasia to children, but at the same time, the government has agreed to starting what they call a 5-year review of the law, which is going to start in June of 2020. So one of the things that actually angers me about Bill C-7 is the government didn't have to do anything. They could have left it alone. The court decision happened. They didn't appeal the court decision. Therefore, whether I like it or not, the court decision was the law of the land because it was not appealed. And they had already agreed to do a 5-year review to start in June of 2020. So therefore, what happens in the near future after the review is done of the law might then mean that they're going to extend euthanasia to children, because there's a lot of discussion about that. Belgium has already done that. The Netherlands allows euthanasia for babies, newborns. So, it's possible it will happen in Canada.
Alex, where do you really see this issue headed over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I see that we need a culture shift in a big way. So the fact that euthanasia is legal does not mean that euthanasia should be occurring. Now, we've had a huge number of euthanasias done already. So last year there was over 5,000 euthanasia deaths in Canada, and there's been over 13,000 since it was legalized. So what we've had is that we've had a fast social acceptance of euthanasia, and the numbers have grown very quickly. But the reality is the culture needs to recognize the importance of caring, and this is what's been missing. There's a couple things. First of all, the government did promise a huge influx of dollars for palliative care at the time of legalizing euthanasia, and we really haven't seen that. So that's the first issue. But secondly, people who believe in a caring society need to step up and recognize the importance of being with, caring for others. Recognize that when my neighbor is going through a difficult time in their life, that they're human. They're a human being. They need care. They need support. People choose euthanasia usually not because of deep physical pain and they feel there's no other way to deal with it. Usually what's happening is they're going through a very difficult time in their life. They're feeling that their life has lost purpose. They feel their life has lost any value. They're wondering what their future holds, and they have fear of that future. So they're seeking euthanasia, or someone's presenting the idea of euthanasia to them, and this is why they're going down that road. A caring society really changes that. We recognize the importance of the human person. We recognize that suffering alone is very difficult, but when you're with someone and you care about them, that in fact you can diminish that nature of suffering greatly. We also recognize that people go through depression, Hal. A lot of people go through deep depression. And when someone cares about them and they're with them and they spend time with them, somehow that depression is not the same anymore because we feel our life is valued. We've been, how would you say, affirmed in our value. This is where society needs to go.
Alex Schadenberg is the Executive Director of Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. Thanks so much for your time today, Alex.
Thank you, Hal.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.